What is happening, y'all? Welcome back to the Media Goose channel. It is I, the Media Goose, your friend Ryan, and the goose is loose, baby. Huh? I am here today with my third installment of my MCU review. We started with Iron Man, followed up with The Incredible Hulk, and now it's time for the first sequel in the MCU, Iron Man 2. This movie starts off with Ivan Vanko. This character is an enemy of Tony that he doesn't even know about. This whole opening scene is like his origin story in the same way that Tony had his in that cave. The opening credits of this movie is Ivan Vanko's kind of building his suit moment. And you find out that his father was working with Howard on arc reactor tech, and that he didn't get any of the credit, and that Howard took everything. And he's laying in a bed dying in Russia while Tony is being celebrated. So right away, you have a character with a very similar point of view, inherently connected stakes to Tony, and I think Vanko is predominantly my favorite part of this film. The thing that I think really is obvious in a lot of the scenes, they cut like 80% of the Ivan Vanko scenes from this movie. That's a quote from Mickey Rourke himself. I think one of the biggest things that this movie does wrong is that Ivan Vanko is the only villain you needed in this movie. This surprised me that I came out feeling this, but Justin Hammer is the biggest misstep in this film. I love Sam Rockwell. Frankly, I enjoy the performance. Just not for this movie. This tonally would have fit better in Iron Man 3 or Iron Man 1. He could have popped up in like a random scene in Iron Man 1 to establish that he could come back. I mean, not that he ever did, but I really think Iron Man 2 would have been even better if this was just Tony versus Ivan Vanko. I think the movie, the tonal whiplash you feel when Hammer is involved is wild. But after that opening scene where we get his building of his suit and an arc reactor, we go to Iron Man dropping in at the Stark Expo, a year-long expo that Tony hopes will be a celebration of technology, advancement, and uniting the world through those things. It's a big part of legacy for Tony. Somebody yells, "I love you, Tony," and he says it's not about me, while they're at the Stark Expo, and Iron Man did this incredible drop-in with cheerleaders, but it's not about me. A lot of the early part of this movie spends time with Tony's ego. And watching it, I was kind of like, I thought Tony was in a more humble place after Iron Man 1, but we get reasoning there. He brags about himself. He brags about the longest period of uninterrupted peace. He brags about his emerging from the cave as the ultimate metaphor of the Phoenix. So this is a lot of hubris and ego for Tony. And he even says this is an effort to impact legacy. So I talked about legacy a lot in that first movie, and this is the overriding theme for Tony. And then you get the ticking clock, the stakes for Tony when he checks his blood toxicity level. They don't tell you what that means the first time he does it, but we come to find out that the more he uses the suit, the worse the polonium poisoning in his body is. So being Iron Man, which started off as saving him, is now killing him. And that is leading to the outbursts of ego, the regression to a more immature Tony Stark. It's because he's dealing with the issue of mortality. So legacy, which was already such a large part of Tony's life, is now even more amplified because once you're dead, you can't impact it anymore. And I think Tony realizes that, so he starts to act very erratically through this movie, and I think it's really well done. Then we go to Washington, D.C. for the Senate hearing, and Tony is being Tony, charismatic. Him and Senator Stern go back and forth. It's a really fun scene. Justin Hammer comes in. I like the intro of Justin Hammer. I think at times I felt like it was Sam Rockwell playing a multiversal variant of Tony more than Justin Hammer. And I understand that that can be a fine line, but I did love that Rockwell calls him Anthony. That was very funny to me. I think what I would have liked is if we saw a different side of Hammer in the way that Tony's persona to the public is an act, like Bruce Wayne almost. And then when Tony's alone, he's more introspective. I wish we got that with Hammer. At the end of the movie, he starts getting more desperate, but it didn't read dramatically for me. I think Justin Hammer takes away from this movie, ultimately. I don't think Vanko should have needed help. How long has Vanko had to accumulate resources? So much of Iron Man 1 was talking about possession of Stark tech and how that was really important to Tony. So I think it would have just made sense if Vanko had been stealing tech for years from Stark, whether it was from outposts in Russia, whether it was a matter of after that 6-month time jump at the beginning of the film when they show you his backstory, we could have just met with him in like a warehouse where he had supplies. I don't think he needed Hammer to bankroll him. And that scene where Vanko gets off the plane after the prison break and it's like a banquet dinner, it's the worst, most out of place scene in the movie. I don't like that side of Hammer at all. That was the time where you show a devious, dark Justin Hammer, not rich boy. I get that they want kind of like a alternate Tony. What if Tony didn't have his moral compass? What if Tony never got to that cave where Jensen saved him? Maybe he'd be a piece of shit like Hammer. But I just think Hammer takes away from everything about Vanko. Vanko should have been the only mirror to Tony in this movie. I think this movie would have been looked at in a similar way to The Dark Knight if you didn't cut out all of the Ivan Vanko scenes and you allowed Mickey Rourke, one of the greatest actors alive. His performance in The Wrestler should have won an Oscar. This dude, you don't get actors like Mickey Rourke. And you cut out 80% of his work. That's the biggest problem with this movie. It should have been a dark, gritty Vanko versus Tony story. Instead, they add in Justin Hammer as like, he's kind of like a pipsqueak, just annoying. And not annoying in a good villain way. Annoying in a, oh, why'd you write it this way? It's not a well-written character, and he never comes back in the MCU. I'm assuming he would have in Armor Wars, but I really just think his tone and everything about the character fit Iron Man 3 better. Maybe even Iron Man 1, but not this movie. This movie should have been Vanko versus Tony. I'm just going to scroll through my notes a little bit. It is funny when he's leaving the Senate. He says, Tony says, "I've successfully privatized world peace. I'm trying to play ball with these ass clowns." And the senator says, "Fuck you, Mr. Stark. Fuck you, buddy." That was really funny. That's a really great scene. And we get more of Vanko's background. I'm going to skip to when the race sequence happens. That was excellent. The race sequence is a really good emergence for Vanko. I think at that point we're like 26 minutes in when the hotel sequence starts with Hammer and Everhart and Elon Musk, who the Tony Stark character is based on, at least this version, the Robert Downey Jr. version. At one point he says, "I'm done serving the liberal agenda." So they really went in on the Elon stuff there. The scene between Tony and Vanko in prison. That's this movie. That's what this movie should have been. That scene should have been like 5 minutes longer. I really think this is the first movie where tone starts to be a problem, where they start to go too much on the comedic stuff. I really think there was a dark version of this movie that would have been like Dark Knight-esque, where Mickey Rourke could have been nominated for an Oscar, maybe even fucking Robert Downey Jr. Also, I don't like the way they handled Tony when Natasha says, if he asks, what would you do if this was your last birthday, right before his birthday party? She says, I would do whatever I wanted, however I wanted, with whoever I wanted. So it's weird to me that then in the post-credit scene, Fury is saying that he was erratic, but Natasha was there influencing and pushing him to the more erratic side of things, kind of showing you how Nick Fury already is the master manipulator. But I didn't like the party scene. I thought that could have been a much darker sequence, again, where, I don't know, I think that sequence is as close as we ever got to, what was the story arc called? The Monster in the Bottle, where Tony's dealing with PTSD and alcoholism. I would have preferred Tony wrapped around a toilet vomiting instead of celebrating with donuts and a hangover and pissing himself in the suit. The tone really let me down with how they handled that. I think, if I had to guess, the over-involvement of Hammer, this sequence, all of the lighter stuff really starts to feel like Marvel's influence, because I really think there was an amazing movie in this. It's a fine movie, it's a good movie, but I just think they took out a lot of the best parts. I don't think Hammer belonged in this movie. And of course, I've been critical of Don Cheadle before because I don't love the casting. I know he's insane, but Terrence Howard was an incredible roadie. I thought they had a better bro connection, which I think is more inherently that dynamic. But Cheadle was fine. He wasn't bad. He just wasn't as good as the character could have been, in my opinion, but nothing wrong. The final showdown was pretty cool, where Vanko seizes control of the Hammer drones and Rhodes' suit. That was a cool dynamic, that Rhodey was like a hostage in the suit. Ultimately, my thoughts on this movie, it's a good movie. I like it. I think that Justin Hammer represents the dark temptation of the MCU to over-rely on humor and a light-hearted tone. I think if this movie had been more of a Dark Knight parallel, where it was just one villain, well, I can't say one villain, Two-Face is in there, but even if you didn't cut Hammer out of this movie and you just made him less of a fucking farce. I love the performance if it's in Iron Man 1 or in Iron Man 3, but not this movie. It was like Whiplash every time. Whiplash, and that was Vanko's name. Whiplash was awesome. Mickey Rourke was awesome. I really love Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. is great. Nick Fury and Natasha were very good. The integration of S.H.I.E.L.D., the furthering of Tony dealing with legacy. There's a lot that I like about this movie. S.H.I.E.L.D. really starts to get involved. I like Tony as a genius. When they leave him everything his father left for him, I really enjoy that. I think if that was the heart of this movie, Tony and his father against Vanko and his father, this movie is so much better than it was. But ultimately, I did enjoy the movie. Give me your thoughts. What did you think of Iron Man 2? I think it's a worthy sequel. That is the first time we start to see what happens when you compromise tone and start to go too light and fluffy. So guys, let me know what you thought of Iron Man 2. My next review will be out soon. I hope you enjoyed. Like the video, subscribe. The Goose is out.